So today I'm going to tell you how I studied for the SAT and basically how I got my 1590 or whatever that I got. So I took the SAT twice. I took one last year. I got a 1450. I took one this year and I got a 1590. So I missed one question. It was on the reading, but I basically pretty close to perfect. So how did I study for this? Well, that's what we're going to go over today. So basically the biggest thing that I did, I took tons and tons of just practice exams. So if you go on Khan Academy, you're going to have to log in. For some reason it's not letting me log in, but basically you'd log in, right? And you'd hit SAT, and then you could go into any of these sections, but I would always do full-length SATs. And whenever you log in, you could actually just find them on here. SAT practice, and so there's actually 8 official full-length practice tests in Khan Academy. I'm sure you know about this, but not many people just do all of them, and I did all of them. I literally went through every single SAT practice test, and every other week I'd take another one. So that took around 16 weeks, because every other week. So I did literally every single one, and I went from the first time I took the SAT with no studying or whatever, I got like a 1330. That was last year, actually, as well. But then I went to 1450, and then I went to 1590. So, really got to take these practice tests. And if you don't have money on you, best thing you can do is go on Khan Academy and take all the 8 official practice tests, because they're actually partnered with Collegeboard. So all these 8 practice tests are basically going to be what you see. And the really nice thing about them is that once you finish them, they will give you immediate scoring. So you don't have to score it yourself or anything like that on the paper book, like exam things. So these ones will actually score it immediately. And I find them much more accurate than the paper ones, but whatever, that's just me. I also like the immediate scoring. And also they'll give you an explanation for each question if you miss it, why you missed it. I find that to be very helpful as well. So basically, the biggest thing is to take as many practice tests as you can. So I highly recommend the Khan Academy ones. You can find others on the internet if you just search up SAT practice tests free or something like that. I'm sure you could find so many. But Khan Academy is probably the best source. You can get 8 of them. I mean, not many people I know would take all 8, but you want to do well, so you want to take all 8. You want to take as many as you can physically and feasibly do. So, besides doing these practice tests, the second thing you should do is practice every single day. So whenever you see here, there's these 8 practice tests, right? There's actually also a tailored practice plan and other like practice questions and videos. So basically, what you want to do is they have on Khan Academy. If you just go down to like SAT or whatever, if you're signed in, I can't sign in for some reason, but they have like these little 15-minute practice questions that you can do, which you can really easily find on there. And you want to do those. You want to do this often. But if not often, try to do at least 15 minutes every day. And do the sections that you think you need help with. Most people are not great at the math no calculator, so I try to do those. Also, there's a ton of things that you just forget over time. Like, I forgot so many of the geometry, like theorems and stuff. So I had to review over those, and they have them all again on Khan Academy. So just do some of those, 15 minutes every day. It'll really help you. Yeah, so just do that. Do some reading, do some math, and you'll be good to go. So the next thing, this is pretty obvious, but once you take those 8 practice exams or those other things, like the questions, see what questions you're missing and focus in on those topics. So like, say you're doing math, right, and you really have no idea how to get the vertex, how to get vertex form or something like that. Really hone in onto vertex form, and you can actually just search up on Khan Academy, vertex form. There you go. You could watch a video on it, and it'll have a bunch of questions like this. Like, look, have a bunch of practice questions. Take as many practice questions as you want, basically, until you know what you know, until you get better on it. Or at it. So basically just do that. So that really helps for the math. Now for the reading, that's a little bit more difficult because I haven't really found many good reading videos in Khan Academy. I'm sure there's some, But just like reading comprehension, the biggest thing I think for that is to just read as many books as you can. This is going to sound really annoying and boring, but really read as many difficult books as you can. I'm talking higher level science books and math books, literature, just anything that you can, because I figured that, I think that one of the biggest things that helped me, my reading section wasn't as good as my math, but the biggest thing that helped me is that I started reading a lot more. Whenever I started taking the SATs, like I started reading like actual higher level material. So not only will that increase your vocabulary, which will help you out in the reading section, but it will also increase just like your comprehension of the words and how like sentence structure works. So really, you gotta read books, man. I know you might want to like play video games or whatever, but take again like 15 minutes just to read some books, or like even like 30 if you can. You will be surprised how much that actually helps. So that's really what I recommend for like the English section, the writing section, because I did not know all the grammar in there. In fact, I'm not very good at grammar. Well, I'm not incredible at grammar. I'm all right, but like you'll just look at sentences and they'll just sound weird to you because you've read sentences like that have other words. So that's why you got to read books, because it'll give you just tons of source material and tons of examples of how sentences work, basically, and where to put commas and where to use these different prepositions or whatever, because you've read these books that use them the correct way. So that's what I recommend for grammar. The next thing I recommend is similar to reading. It's on the same topic, is learn to read quickly and basically comprehend reading quickly. So how do you do that? Well, again, you just have to read books, and you just have to read them quickly. And the way that you do that is you just kind of, if you notice your regular reading speed, try to increase it by like another word. And that might be difficult to kind of calculate in your head, but try to read fast, and you'll know what I mean when you start reading. Try to read fast, try to comprehend fast, and you can also do that on the practice, like reading quizzes or whatever on Khan Academy. You can just attempt to read fast, because they'll give you like 15 minutes or 11 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever it is, and just try to finish that in like 8 minutes. Or if you can't do that, like 10 minutes or something. Just try to beat the timer on that, and read quickly and comprehend quickly. And that's not only a good skill for the SAT, it's great for APs, because if you can take, like, I think my fastest time that I ever took to take an AP macro exam was 20 minutes, and you're supposed to have like 65 minutes on that or something. So if you can consistently do like 2 minutes less in each section on the SAT, or like each reading passage, that's really going to add up, and you're going to have a lot of time to review and a lot of time to think about questions that you don't know. And that's another thing. If you don't know a question, this is obvious, but skip it. Each question is worth the same amount on the SAT. So finish the easiest ones first, and then those hard ones, once you read those things quickly and you have the extra time, go into them, look at the passage, and really, really read the passage, because there will be the answer in there. That's another thing. All of these questions have the answer in the passage. So if you don't find it in the passage, you're just not looking right, and you just got to read it again. That's why you got to skip those hard ones and do that in the beginning. So that's a pretty obvious one, but learn to read quickly. That's a big one. So another thing is check over your answers. For some reason, I never checked over my answers, because I just felt like, oh my god, I'm so bored of this test, or like I have no energy left. But just think, okay, this is going to be very important on your college application. So check over your answers. Take the extra 5 minutes and check over your answers, not only for accuracy, but also just make sure that they're lined up correctly on the page. Like one time I completely screwed up, and like 8 of my answers were lined up incorrectly, so I would have gotten them all wrong. But I didn't, because I checked it for my answers. Another thing, like on this SAT, I heard that the math curve was really hard on the one that I took. Funny thing, literally, I had like a second left, and I figured out the answer to one of the math questions. And the proctor lady started yelling at me. She was like, pencils down, pencils down. She kept on yelling at me. And I was like, sorry, I gotta finish this one. And that's how I didn't lose that 30 points or whatever. So make sure you check over your answers. Use every single second allotted to you, don't just like, I see kids just like lay down, like don't do that, that's retarded, don't do that, it's stupid. Okay, so for math and for reading, there's these things that, I mean, I'm sure other people have called them, but they're like keywords. So example for math, if you look at minimum or maximum of a function, and it's like an x squared or it's like an x cubed, that's always going to be where the slope is equal to 0 and where there's these little humps. Those are always minimum and maximum. So you just gotta, again, you just gotta read, you gotta do all these practice questions, and you will learn this vocab, and it'll be extremely helpful. Other context clues and like reading, if you don't know a vocabulary word, look around in the sentence, plug in those words, make sure they make sense. Sometimes there's questions on the writing section or whatever, and I always hated these questions where it's like paragraph or sentence 4 and paragraph 5 is best placed blah da da, and it's like after sentence 1 or something. I hated those. I could never do this correctly. But what you got to do is save those for the end, and then do them and literally plug them into each section and make sure that it works with the story continuity wise. It just doesn't seem out of place, and it just logically is a logical procession or whatever. Like, you got to make sure. So read the context clues. That's obvious again. Okay, so next thing. A lot of people have trouble memorizing these theorems and these equations that go with the math. Well, first off, you really shouldn't memorize them. You should just understand where they come from and then memorize them. So you should memorize them or whatever because it makes it faster. But a lot of people don't know how to make those connections. So what do? Well, you download this application called Anki, and you can download this on your computer or to your phone. iPhone version's like $25. It's way too expensive in my opinion, but you can do it. And this is like one of the best memorization applications that I've found. I use it to memorize some Japanese and stuff, but you can use it for literally anything, for any sort of SAT. So if you don't know a theorem, you don't know part of a material thing, I don't know, you just don't know information, make some Anki flashcards and you will memorize them. I swear that this stuff works, because this is how I memorize like 500 kanji, which are the Chinese characters that are in Japanese. They're also just Chinese characters, but I could not have memorized 500 kanji in like 4 weeks, just using rote memorization and writing them down. So I'd have to have used Anki. So Anki really works. It's very good. The way that it works is it's spaced repetition. So basically, you'll give a flashcard, right? You'll study the flashcard, and then say you don't know it, you press again. Say you do know it, you press good. If you press again, it's going to show up in that same review set. So it's going to show up within the 10 minutes that you review. And if you press good, it might show up tomorrow or something. And say you press good on that flashcard, shows up tomorrow, you press good again, and it'll show up in 4 days. So basically, it's going to space out your repetitions of those cards so that you utilize your long-term memory, so that these things get shoved in there. Literally, like I have 4 weeks again, and I know like 500 kanji. So it's pretty insane. It works really well. You just have to know how to make the flashcards, and there's tons of tutorials online how to do that. Mine, again, is not working because my internet is really awful right now. But download Anki, see if it works. I mean, I just think it does. But if not, you can make old-fashioned flashcards, and flashcards are one of the best ways to memorize material anyway. So if you don't know like equations and stuff, try using Anki. I think it works really well. But I don't know. That's just me. The next thing. So on your calculator, you want to learn how to fully utilize your calculator. So I have a TI-84. You want to learn all the little fast calculator tricks or whatever. So how to make fractions from decimals and stuff like that. How to just plug in numbers as X. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is just plugging numbers as X. So basically you hit the X button, then you hit store, and then you hit the number, or maybe it's the number store X. You can play around with it. I don't have my calculator with me. But say you have, and this will always be on the SAT, a quadratic equation, you have to solve it, right? And you want to check your answer. But you don't want to, but it's difficult to put parentheses around the numbers and then hit squared and all that, yada, yada, yada. So you can store that number as X, and then you can do like X squared plus 4X plus 3 equals, and then just figure out what that answer is. You can also do that if you're going to make a graph. Graphing is good because there's often questions about like, it'll give you two linear equations and you have to solve them. I used to not be good at those because I'd always mess up somewhere, but all you have to do is graph it and it'll give you the answer right there. And then you can just plug it in. Also, make sure you read the question though, because if you just plug it in, sometimes it's going to be wrong because you have to plug it in and then you have to add 2 or something like that, and they'll just screw you up. So make sure you read the question, but use your calculator to the best of your ability. Don't just like use it to add and subtract. Use it to graph. Use it to plug in numbers. It's actually kind of OP. If you think about it like that, like having a calculator makes it really easy. But yeah, and so just use your calculator to the best of the ability. And that's basically it. So going over the SAT, you're going to have section 1. This is just from prepscholar.com. You're going to have reading. There's going to be 52 questions in reading, and you're going to have 65 minutes. So that might seem like a lot of time, but if you don't read fast, that's going to go by real quick. So you want to make sure that whenever you take these practice exams, like I'm suggesting, and I think you should definitely take as many as you can, you want to try to answer all these 52 questions, but you want to try to get down so that you can answer them in 45 minutes or 50 minutes. And that may seem like a little insane because you're answering questions at a rate of like a question per minute, and you know, where's this time for reading and stuff like that. Well, a question per minute, you're not going to answer a question in a minute. That's way too long. A minute's actually a very long time. It's 60 seconds. You'll probably be answering these in like 10 seconds. So if you answer each of these in 10 seconds, you'll have plenty of time to read. But regardless, you want to read quickly, you want to comprehend quickly, and then you want to answer these questions, and you want to have as much time as possible to review. That's the biggest thing, is you want to read quickly, you want to answer quickly, and then you want to review your questions. That's the biggest thing. It's not even so much that you're making these mistakes because you don't know the content. You're making them because you're under this time pressure and you feel stressed, and you look at the clock and like, oh crap, there's 5 minutes left. Never get in that situation. Never be the guy who's still answering questions in the last 20 seconds. Unless you know that you missed one and you're reviewing, always review for the last 10 minutes if you can. That's why you want to at least have 10 minutes. I would prefer 15. But of course, each SAT is different. Some of the reading is going to be more difficult. But if you take those 8 practice exams and take the extra ones and try to comprehend quickly, you can totally do it. It's not too bad. So first, to get reading, you got to read 65 minutes. Like I said, try to do it as quickly as possible. Use context clues, and just sometimes this is a bad habit. Okay, and I'm only going to say this to you if you think you can do it. If you can skim through the passage and you kind of know what it's about because you read the title, and usually there's like a little brief like summary about the author, and you know that author and you know what they're going to think and they're going to write about. This can only happen a couple times because basically you can like say you have a thing about Abraham Lincoln or something. You know that like, oh, you know, he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, so you already know some stuff about him. So sometimes you can skim those passages and just read what the questions are asking about and like say like, oh, in line 44 or whatever, just read that. And you'll be fine. But I would not do that all the time. Only do that if you're extremely confident and you're under time pressure. So, next section. You're going to get a break, and then you're going to have the writing and language. So, this one's pretty easy. If you are an English speaker, you can do most of these. Only thing is time pressure, again, 44 and 35. This one's actually, I find, much more difficult to be under the time. So, again, you're just going to have to read very quickly. Never read the passages fully. I used to make that mistake on the writing and language. You'd never have to read the passages fully. All you have to do is read a sentence before and a sentence ahead of the questions that they're asking. Now, if they ask a question that says like, oh, in this paragraph, sentence blank would be best place blank, read that paragraph, read the sentence before that paragraph, read the sentence after that paragraph. Find out what the main idea of that paragraph is, and then place the sentence. So never read these things fully, because that's just... you're going to die on the time if you read these things fully and try to understand it. Just don't do it. Read a sentence before, a sentence after, and the sentence that you have the question on. So the math no calculator, here's another difficult one. 20 questions, 25 minutes. So again, you get more time than questions, but the questions are typically going to be a little bit harder. But after you've taken so many SATs, you're going to start to understand what College Board wants from you and what sort of questions that they're going to be asking. So there's always going to be one where you solve a linear equation. There's always going to be one where you have 2 linear equations, you have to find the solution to both. Always going to be one with like a vertex or parabola. Sometimes there's some circles. So basically just understand what they want. Take as many practice questions as you can on Khan Academy, and you'll be fine. And make sure you understand how questions are worded, when to use like greater than or less than, when to equate an equation, when to subtract, just stuff like that, and you'll be fine for that. So then you have another break, and then you have math with calculator. So 38 questions, 55 minutes. So this one you're going to have some free response where you can just input your questions. This I think is way easier, and I'm sure most people think is way easier than the math with no calculator, because you can use a calculator on this one. And again, plug in as many answers as you'd like. Once you finish it, use store X and see if you can just plug in the answer and you'll get it. This one I can't really say much about. Sometimes there's some graphing ones that are a little bit difficult. Learn how to read a graph, by the way. Learn the skewed distributions. That was a big thing for me. I could never get the positive and negative skews. So actually you should probably go on Khan Academy and look those up, because for some reason I can never get those. But now I understand them. So skewed distributions and the mean, median, mode, and which one would increase whenever you change a set of data. So that's actually pretty important. So look those up, and then you're done. If you have the essay, I wouldn't do the essay because no college really requires them. Like the only college I was thinking about applying to that required them was Duke, and now Duke doesn't use it. So that's basically it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you do well in your SAT, and hopefully this was helpful to you.